So our next speaker, Andy Hood, is the VP of Emerging Technologies at WPP, and his experience of technological creativity goes way back to the 90s. It includes 20 years of working at AKQA before he took up a role on a company-wide basis in 2020. So within WPP, though, Andy has very much been at the forefront of strategy around all those sorts of things that we keep hearing about: generative AI, Web3, immersive technologies under the banner of Metaverse. He also founded a cross-network of WPP creative tech community for creative technologists. And he's also worked extensively on a fantastic program that WPP have introduced around creative apprentices in the sort of technology space, who are now actually getting very involved in solving some of the client challenges. And those people that come into that apprenticeship come from very diverse, different backgrounds. So no doubt Andy will be chatting about that as well. He was part of the team that delivered the Give Me the Future hybrid metaverse physical concert you might have sort of seen on internet and otherwise, and the subsequent Quest VR experience for the rock band Bastille, and that was in partnership with EMI and Epic Games. He's featured in Adweek's list of the top 10 creative minds in digital. So without further ado, please can I hand over to Andy.
Hi there, everybody. So yes, to round things out, the world of generative artificial intelligence. So I'm going to talk about that for about 25 minutes, and then we'll have a bit of a chat with Katie Love, who is at the back there waving, who is the head of event experience at MPG. And what we'll do then is actually show how everything that I'm about to talk about is relevant to everybody who works in events and event management. So artificial intelligence has been around for quite a while. I remember being involved in projects with it in the mid-2010s and beyond. Generative AI is the thing which has exploded this year. Generative AI being the way that AI creates new creative assets. And that's been around for a little while, but it really exploded this year. And we've seen a lot of headlines. So headlines like these, which are positive and excited about the creative possibilities, and headlines like these, which are altogether more cautious and wary of the problems that we may face. Both of those approaches are completely valid and totally sane to have. So why has generative AI exploded this year, given that people have been working on this for quite some time? There's two reasons for that. Firstly is the incredible sophistication in output that we see. Anybody who's played with the tools, the results are kind of mind-blowing. And that's because of the huge rise in the amount of training data used to set up these generative models. So the large language models and the things that generative AI uses, and they've been trained in some cases, so the NVIDIA model, Megatron, was trained with 530 billion parameters. GPT-4 is trained allegedly with upward of 150 trillion parameters. So when you see these incredible results, this is why. Secondly, tools that we can all use that are free of charge, easy to use, easy to find. Is there anybody who has not used ChatGPT, even just to play around with? Excellent, because really there is no excuse at this point for not having played around with ChatGPT. And you've seen the kind of results. You get the way that it works. Mid-Journey, used through Discord, so probably fewer people have played around with that one, but free of charge until fairly recently, easy to use, easy to play around with, which means that just millions of people who are not professionals in these spaces can splash around in these tools, see these incredible outputs, and be blown away by them. And that's why we see such a huge amount of conversation going on and really exploding this year. But it's not just about text and image. We're actually seeing generative AI now move outward into all other areas of creativity and the creative world. So we see generative AI being used to produce audio and music just from prompts. Describe the sound you want, and generative AI can create that sound. Audio to audio. So with this one, which is MuseNet from OpenAI, the prompt is actually a set of notes from which MuseNet can improvise in a variety of styles. There is this company, Runway, in the States, who've produced text to video. So these are 720p videos at 24 frames per second. Are they absolutely perfect? Not quite. Are they getting there? Absolutely. All the big companies actually are now releasing text to video models. And also, even this, which is generatively created, fully explorable, immersive virtual worlds. This is sped up, of course, but you can see someone sketching out an environment that they want to create, and then they will choose a style and a theme, and hey presto, we have a fully explorable virtual world created with generative AI. Now, it's not just necessarily about creating new content either. So we can actually now have these models ingest content and then describe it to us. So this, that looks like a fried egg, is actually accurately described by GPT-4 as a photo of a white cat curled up on a grey bed. The cat is sleeping with its head tucked under its body. There is an orange fruit placed on the cat's back, making it look like an egg yolk on a fried egg. Now, that would actually, I would expect that to catch out an AI. But that has been beautifully and accurately described, so there is an understanding of what this content is that lends itself well to the idea of using AI to interpret images and create content from the back of those things. There's also been reactions to some of the things created using generative AI. So you may remember the song that voice cloned The Weeknd and Drake to produce a song that was on YouTube, got 11 million hits over a 2-day period before being taken down and removed. And there was a general consensus that this is a bad and dangerous thing and should never happen. Grimes took a very different view. She thought, have at it, use my voice, create some music, let's split the royalties. There's an opportunity here. And actually created a platform to enable people to do this safely and responsibly. The idea being that when we can do these things safely and responsibly, then actually, why don't we just embrace these things as new art forms? Now, when it comes to voice cloning, how actually effective is it and how authentic is it? So voice cloning, a technique where I could take a few seconds of any of our voices here and train an AI to say something new in that voice which has never been said authentically enough that friends and family would have trouble distinguishing those things. Let's see how realistic that is. This is a conversation between Steve Jobs here and Joe Rogan that never took place. It's been entirely scripted by GPT-3 and then executed using voice cloning. So let's hear a clip of that.
I got you, man. That's cool. So let's talk about some shit, all right?
All right.
So you studied at Reed College. Tell me about your time there. What did you learn? And you dabbled in Eastern mysticism there, right? Do you still go back and look at Hinduism and Buddhist texts and things?
Not texts and things. I actually took a course in that. I have a very deep belief that the people in the Indian subcontinent are most responsible for human civilization's current state.
So that's pretty authentic, technically incredibly impressive, quite unnerving. And again, both of those experiences of this are completely valid. Now, everything I've talked about so far would give the impression that generative AI is like it's the end, it's the replacement, this is the final act in the process, but nothing could be further from the truth. So this is Adobe Firefly, and what we're seeing here in this video are lots of different generative AI models integrated into Adobe's existing creative tools, Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere, and all the others. This is how generative AI will work. The people who have used Photoshop and Illustrator and Premiere will continue to use them, and that software will be supercharged with these generative AI models. These are tools for creative professionals, not replacements for creative professionals. You still need people who have the expertise to know what to aim for on the way in and the experience to know what good looks like on the way out. The existence of something like Midjourney does not suddenly turn someone like me into Picasso or Andy Warhol. These are still tools that empower people and make them better and able to do more things and stretch their imagination and be quicker and more effective and more imaginative in what they do. So, the supercharging of existing tools is how generative AI will find its way into the world in the software that we use. Also, the platforms that power these things are evolving at a hectic rate. So, there are some good reasons why we would be somewhat reticent to use some of these generative AI models to do full-on commercial work and put things out into the public space. We'll go into some of those later. but there are very good legal and ethical reasons. The platforms that we use, that we build and train our models from, is the reason for that. Most of these models are trained from the internet. The internet, as we know, is not necessarily the most wholesome thing in the world, is it? Which obviously has an impact on the content that gets produced. We need control of the training data. We want to know that it is our data, they're our brands, it's not biased, it's our IP, they're our brand guidelines, our assets, our logos, etc., etc., etc. That is all happening behind the scenes. This is the way that will power us doing full commercial work with generative AI, powering our creative teams. Microsoft, of course, invested many billions of dollars into OpenAI. They didn't do this so that they could launch their own version of ChatGPT or their own version of DALL-E, which is OpenAI's image generator. They did it so they could integrate these tools into the software that we all already use. Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. We will see generative AI features being integrated into all these tools that we all use. And that is the same strategy with Adobe with their creative tools and everybody else with all of their tools. This idea that we will go to the model, type prompts into the model, and that's how we will use generative AI. It's a very short-term thing. And in fact, through things called plugins, that actually enables the likes of us to build generative AI models into the tools and applications and software that we build for clients. And loads of companies are actually integrating these AI models into the products and services that they produce. So that's a bit of the landscape for generative AI right now. How do these things actually impact the creative process? So I said earlier that I see these as tools for creative professionals and not replacements. So this is a mid-journey image of a model in a kind of alpine setting. And this is very different to the kind of prompt that someone like me might type in. I might go to Midjourney and I might type cat on a flagpole on the moon and then be amazed at the image that I get. This image of this model in this alpine setting, whoever put this together has specified the camera that should be used to produce the shot, the lens on the camera, and the filter on the lens on the camera to produce this shot. This is not something that someone like me would even know to do. So these are tools that are where the best of the tool is produced by people who actually know what they're doing in the creative space. This is called prompt engineering. It will be very short-lived. It's very powerful because this is how we learn how the machines work and how to get the best out of them, and how they kind of power people who already do these things, which is why the best work with generative AI is being done by artists, designers, AI specialists, not just random people who've stumbled across Midjourney, ChatGPT. Prompt engineering will be fairly short-lived because actually the machines will prompt themselves. Now this is actually quite an old example, but it's the best one that I've seen, so I still use it. This is GPT-3 as it was at the time, and Stable Diffusion, which is an image generator embedded into nothing more sophisticated than a Google Sheet. So what do we have here? Well, we've got a story prompt up here in the top left, where we have typed "The wizard approached the abyss" as a prompt. GPT-3 has then generated this fantasy story, which is written in paragraphs at the bottom of the screen. Elements of that story have been automatically fed into Stable Diffusion to produce the images that go along with those paragraphs of text. And hey presto, we have a storyboard generator. But really what we have here, if we think slightly more deeply about it, is the kind of primitive beginnings of an automated content production pipeline powered by generative AI, which will get more powerful as we enter the age of the AI agent. So we've talked at the moment about putting a prompt in, getting a result, refining, iterating, adapting, until eventually we get a result that we like. AI agents basically can kind of do this for themselves. So we can put in a much higher level problem to solve, and an AI can break that down into subtasks, launch its own AI to solve those subtasks, doing the research it needs to do. Those AI can break their tasks down, and so on, all reporting back up the chain until the overarching problem is solved. And again, we can explore this, and we should explore this, because Agent GPT is free of charge, easy to find, and easy to use. Find it, play with it. What am I doing here? I am going to give this a name, and then I'm going to give it an overarching problem to solve. And in the spirit of optimism, I am going to ask it to come up with a plan to solve the climate crisis. And what we'll see when I hit go on this is Agent GPT will immediately look to break this down into subtasks. There we go. There are 3 of them. The first one is to analyze global carbon emissions. So at the moment, it has launched its own AI basically to interrogate that problem. That AI will define that problem. There it is. And then break that problem down into its own set of subtasks. There we go. And this iteration will continue and continue until the overarching problem is solved and there is a plan to solve the climate crisis that nobody will ever implement because the AI can only do so much. But we can see then how this supercharging of software with AI becomes more supercharged when the AI can start to iterate on its own problems on our behalf. So we see the software being supercharged, and this is how we will get to generative AI. Now, some of the things we see now are fairly short-term, important but short-term things. What are the challenges with all of this? Because there are some. And I'm going to go through these really quickly because actually WPP has an entire hour-long session devoted to these challenges. Legislation in this area will lag far behind behavior. As we saw it with social, with lots of other technology-related spheres, legislation can be quite slow in appearing. And that void should be filled by people like us actually coming up with the relevant guardrails, guidelines, so that we can act safely and responsibly with all of this and be positive and actually set a benchmark for how to do these things properly. And those subjects within that session, which is run by WPP's most senior legal and ethical counsels, those subjects include the dramatic impact of incredibly large numbers of fake content that we will see. Next year is election year, both over here and in the States. Expect this to be something of an avalanche. Also, bias. These things are trained from data on the internet. We know that the internet is full of a huge amount of bias. Therefore, that bias is reflected, if not even exacerbated, in some of the results that we see. And so we need to look at the output through a lens of potential bias and make sure the data we use is not biased and that we are not contributing to the bias of the data that we see. Copyright. There are lawsuits out against Midjourney and Stable Diffusion because they are trained using stock images that are copyrighted from the likes of Getty, right, which they shouldn't be doing. This has an impact in the output, makes the output something we don't really want to see going out to the public and being paid for and sold commercially. It's not really what we're about. Then the protection of IP and data. In some of those early models, what you type in as an input can be somebody else's output because it continues to train the model. Samsung got caught by this. They uploaded some code into ChatGPT so they could interrogate that code. That code appeared in somebody's output. You'd think that Samsung would know better, but it really just illustrates how easy that can be to fall into. So we need to safeguard ourselves and our clients and everybody else from these kinds of things happening. And then lastly, the inability of generative AI to accurately reproduce actual physical products. So these look pretty good, right? Nike shoe, Coke bottle. If you can see, if you look closely, the logo here on the Nike shoe is missing an eye. It says Nike AR, which is wrong. The Coke bottle, the logo is wrong. There's a C missing. And that Coke bottle, although we can see that it's meant to be a Coke bottle, is not quite a Coke bottle at all. So these are the kinds of things that would get people into a lot of trouble, get us fired, that kind of thing. This is bad. But these are things that generative AI would struggle with. So these are things that we need to get around. That's what that session does. So what are we doing then to make use of all this? How is this not just theory and an interesting session? How is this actually powering the strategy we have and the work that we do moving forward? I'm going to start with just a small number of examples where generative AI has been used in the execution of a creative campaign. So actually used by designers as a creative tool. And then look deeper at what strategically this means for us. So this is a campaign for Nestle. This is a Vermeer painting, very famous, called The Milkmaid. And this is a technique called outpainting, where the canvas is expanded on all sides and that environment filled in a way which is completely authentic to the original piece, resulting effectively in a new piece of art with the original Vermeer painting at the core. This one, for GoFundMe, generative AI was used to aggregate the styles of murals across the US, and then to come up with a new mural style that could be used to generate this film that brings to life GoFundMe campaigns in the States across the calendar year, but also bring to life the people who contributed to and initiated those campaigns in this kind of beautiful and quite emotive film. This one, to promote Remembrance Sunday, sees the use of letters from actual soldiers in the front lines, in the trenches in World War I and World War II, and to take key phrases from those letters and use those as the beginning of prompts to generative AI to actually bring to life and visualize the scenarios that those soldiers are talking about, bring us much closer to them again in this really kind of emotive, empathetic way. This one is actually from last year. So this is in a slightly different field when we were talking about voice cloning, deep faking, those kinds of things. This man is a galactic-sized Bollywood megastar, Shah Rukh Khan. He filmed an advert for Cadbury's, and then we deep faked his image and voice cloned him, all with his consent, of course. And we did that so that people who own tiny stores on the streets of Mumbai could generate videos promoting their tiny stores starring Shah Rukh Khan, which is something that would have been completely impossible to them in the era before the advent of these kinds of technologies. Now, all of these pieces kind of make it sound like what a wonderful thing, what a silver bullet. We, rather than use our normal processes in our teams, we just had generative AI and we did these amazing things. Actually, that's completely the opposite of the truth. We used the people we use and the processes that we use, and we enabled and empowered those people with these generative AI tools. So this, again, is people being amplified in their skills with these technologies. Strategically, at a deeper level, we see the use of AI and generative AI across our entire industry. At the moment, we focus very much on this sector of inspiration, right? Inspiration, ideation, concepting, storyboarding. This is a very safe area to play because these assets do not find their way into the public domain. These are thought starters. This is what AI is very, very good at. Visualizing something very quickly to get us off and running. Coming up with descriptions of things in multiple different varieties that we can interrogate and iterate off the back of. Coming up with lots of varieties of thought starters and ideas. It raises the floor for everybody. They're not finished articles as a general rule. If you see a brand strategy written by ChatGPT, if your chief strategy officer wrote it, you would be very disappointed. But if one of your interns wrote it, you'd be pretty happy, and then you would have a team of people iterate on that, refine it, and make it better. So this is a great place to start. This is where we started. In automation, when we get into kind of the more labor-intensive and time-intensive operations, there AI does a different job in speeding a lot of things up and automating a lot of manual things. So there is a product we already have, some of these things already exist, called Brand Guardian, which uses visual APIs for AI from Microsoft to analyze content and determine that it fits within the brand guidelines of clients. You know, it's the right logo, right colors, right fonts, the right amount of white space all over it, all that kind of thing. But it can also analyze the people in an image and make sure that that image adheres to ours and clients' strict diversity and inclusivity standards. So you've seen probably, remember those old pictures of something, some kind of business software, and there's a boardroom and there's a group of people sat around a boardroom table and they're all middle-aged white guys in suits. Well, that would be rejected by Brand Guardian, and rightly so. So some of these things already exist. Some of them are being planned, but they're different models all kind of being bolted together. Now, we don't want people going to all of the models individually and kind of picking and choosing and being open to some of the challenges that we saw earlier. So we're building our own enterprise platform that brings these models together for all our agencies to use in whatever part of the industry they work in. There will be use cases that mean these models can be brought together to help them in a custom UI, which looks a little bit like this. This is a beta version. that we're just seeing somebody use here. But this enterprise platform that we're building means we can bring the best models together, put the guardrails around them and the safeguards so that everybody who's using this tool is doing it in a safe and responsible way. Here you can see lots of variations on an image of a perfume bottle at sunset by a window. Really getting off the ground fast, basically, giving us something to work with. So these tools are evolving. Some of this stuff is out there. It can be registered. We can use it now. Other things are being added over time. There will be more and more brought to this as it continues to evolve and be developed. Now, the last challenge I talked about in that section with the Nike shoe and the Coke bottle, the almost Nike shoe and the almost Coke bottle, is this inability of generative AI to recreate physical products accurately. So there was a big announcement recently for a joint venture between WP and NVIDIA. NVIDIA, of course, are huge in this generative AI space. They are also big in the image rendering space, in the virtual production space with Omniverse. So what we have here is a process by which we can actually accurately recreate physical products over and over and over and over, but put them inside creative environments. I have this video that explains it beautifully so that I don't have to.
Training models on millions of images makes accurate logos and up-to-date product information difficult to achieve with generative AI. NVIDIA and WPP are building a groundbreaking, generative AI-enabled content engine to solve this industry challenge. Built on NVIDIA AI and Omniverse, this engine gives brands the ability to build and deploy product-accurate and brand-compliant content faster and more efficiently than ever before. The process starts by building a physically accurate digital twin of a product using Omniverse Cloud, which connects product design data from industry-standard tools. Then, WPP artists create customized and diverse virtual sets using a combination of digitized environments and generative AI tools from organizations such as Adobe and Getty Images, trained on fully licensed data using NVIDIA Picasso, ensuring that generative AI content remains accurate and on-brand. This unique combination of generative AI and manufacturing data allows WPP to build accurate photorealistic visual content and e-commerce experiences that bring new levels of realism and scale to the industry.
So that's actually been in the works for about 2 years. So it's quite timely that basically it's been realized now. And because the ability for us to recreate, whether it's a car or a Coca-Cola bottle or a tube of toothpaste accurately, time and time again, in thousands of generatively created environments, you can imagine changing those things by region, by market, by people, whatever. That's a very powerful thing for us to do. So as we get towards the end of this, there is one last thing that we are using generative AI to help us tackle, and that is the underrepresentation of people who actually use these tools, because there is an underrepresentation in that area, as there is sadly in so many walks of life. So we founded the WPP Creative Technology Apprenticeship that Liz referred to before I started. And that is these people on the right-hand side. That is an incredibly diverse group of people who are brilliant artists, technicians, creators, builders, who would never, by traditional recruitment methods, have found their way into this industry that they can be such a huge part of. So bringing this group together with the kind of state-of-the-art tools, partners, training, clients that we have, really amplifying and empowering these people. As an example, a project here off a brief from L'Oreal was to solve a fairly mundane problem, that of the selling of scents online when all you have are the scent notes. Now, I'm probably not the target audience for this. I don't know what flower bombs are or what to expect of floral accords. The apprentices, though, use the scent notes as the beginnings of prompts to image generating AI, Stable Diffusion, basically to produce a visualization of the scent. This one is slightly more straightforward. So here we go, the freshness of sea spray and the sun. This image speaks 1,000 words as to what to expect from this as a scent. My French, I'm ashamed to say, is so bad. I have no idea what that says. But I don't really need to know what that says, because this image tells me everything I need to know about whether to buy this scent or not. So these aren't mind-bending, creative things that you look at and go, oh my word, isn't generative AI amazing? Because actually, as it becomes normalized, that kind of sense of PR value wears off. We just see these tools as solving problems. Here, lastly, a brief from Unilever around Hellmann's mayonnaise. Saw us use ChatGPT as the back end, again, to a Discord chatbot. And what we do here is to type in a set of leftovers that we have, and then this bot will give us a full recipe that includes those leftovers and Hellmann's mayonnaise. Very simple to do. This could be integrated into WhatsApp, Messenger, or a variety of different platforms. It just shows how powerful but simple these tools are. And when we're using those tools in the hands of these people, then we can not just use the power of generative AI to transform the work that we do, or even to transform how we do that work, but actually to transform who does that work. And that is a very powerful thing that I think we should all invest in and get behind, because diverse work starts with a diverse workforce, and these people and those that will follow them are the future of the industry. I leave you with this quote, and I leave you with this quote because it's the last time I can really use it, because it's not true anymore. It used to be true, it's always been true. We overestimate technology in the short term and underestimate technology in the long term. Think of metaverse and the madness of metaverse last year and how it was going to change the world. And then a year later, it hasn't really changed anything, and everybody thinks, well, that was a bit crap, wasn't it? That's dead. Actually, neither of those things are true. It was overestimated in the short term. Actually, it will be transformative. Lots of amazing things are still happening. It's not dead by any means. We underestimate in the long term. Not true now, because we can't overestimate something where every day there is an announcement which is utterly mind-blowing. And I don't think anybody is underestimating the profound impact of generative AI to transform the way that we do so many things over the long term either. Thank you very much for that. And I will bring in Katie Love, who is the head of event experience for MPG, because I've talked about, let's sit down, look at that, comfy chairs. So I've talked about a whole lot of things, and I haven't mentioned events once. You've been putting events together for quite a long time, right? And you've kept up with the tech along the way?
Yeah, it's primarily because I've worked in a lot of technology-based events and seen a lot more sort of technological advancements within the events, both the event content and the events that we've been running. And so have been quite aware of the way, especially within financial services and insurance, AI has actually been incorporated into a lot of their tools for a long time. So my understanding of AI and how it's worked has probably been a little bit further ahead than most of my kind of event peers.
So are you using any of these tools just in your day-to-day?
Yeah, so I actually use Agent GPT, because I think when you ask the basic questions that as event managers we ask, how do I understand my audience better? How can I understand more about what my attendees are going to want to do at my event? How do I do better networking? The parameters are so loose on those questions, you could get so many different answers. And as you said, with ChatGPT, you put one in and every time the answer's different. So using something that breaks it down and actually then can create a more structured response is really important. And I think one of the things that's important to remember is it's not just a marketing tool. It's not just about what the output is. You don't have to be using it to get creative output. You need to kind of think about it more as an aggregator of the world's data that can answer your questions that you would normally have to do those surveys that no one answers for events, and pull that information together to give you the tools to then be able to create more interesting experiences.
It's interesting on that note, because one thing that happens obviously in creating a marketing campaign is you have personas for the people that you're going to be marketing whatever it is to. So you can use ChatGPT to actually create those audience personas, and it gives them the names that, and the kind of the bracket they might be in and where they live and what they like. Basically, that's one thing. But having done that, you can actually then get ChatGPT to play the role of one of those audience personas, and you can have a conversation with it. Basically, you can learn more about it and iterate with it. Now, that to me would seem to hold true if you were looking at an audience for an event too. You want to pitch it at certain people in certain industries with certain interests.
Very much.
Do the same kind of modeling, right?
Yeah, and actually the persona side of things is really valuable because we, oftentimes an event producer will have to go and do 20, 30, 40 research calls with your delegate audience to understand what their challenges might be right now. Whereas when you use that persona ability and you have to use some plugins that allow you to access the current internet data rather than 2021, but it can be feel like a real back and forth conversation. And one of the tools that's similar to that I think is invaluable is when you're trying to establish a baseline for ChatGPT, you can ask ChatGPT to ask you questions. So you can say, I want you to create 5 personas for my event, but first, in order to make you understand my event, ask me 20 questions so that you can understand what my event is. And it will ask really complex questions. How long has this piece of content been running at your event? What's the uptake? It'll ask you all kinds of different things. And that's, I think, where people are maybe not aware of these tools or these prompts that it has. It doesn't, as I said, it doesn't have to be just straight input, output. And that's where it's super valuable.
It's incredibly important, actually, in that way, that AI is not an absolute in as much as let's get the answer from the AI. How you set it up to answer your question determines how it answers your question. So if we did a workshop where we created a fake product and we went, give me a strategy to launch this product, it would come out with something very generic. If we went in and said, this is our product, these are our brand values, we believe strongly in this, that, and the other, we want to speak to these people, it would come up with something that actually speaks to all of that. So how you set it up, the process you go to, the structure you take, determines the quality of output that you get. It's really important.
And I would say, to add to that, it remembers. So you can refer to past conversations. So if you start a new conversation, you can say, based on the information that we discussed and this chat, tell me X, Y, and Z. The whole point of it is built to learn as it goes. So you are inputting information and it is retaining that information to then craft better responses for you as it goes down the process. So it learns as it goes, and the more you can give it, the better the output's going to be.
And of course, from an imaging point of view, basically, just as a range of thought starters around kind of logos and branding and all of these kinds of things. Again, it's not one where I would go, I want the finished article from here, but as a, give me 10 examples of, and then we have some things to iterate from and move from. Using things in combination, so a hero image that you might have, and then generating what might make a good Instagram post with all of the hashtags, with all of the emojis and everything. It's very capable of doing these things. And even to a more extreme example, you may well find that I showed the immersive virtual world that was produced, basically sketching. So I've seen a demo that was in Omniverse, which is NVIDIA, of sketching a floor plan, just drawing an area, going, okay, well, a sofa's here and a table here and a thing here and a big screen there. And then hitting generate, and that floor plan being generated and filled in with, icons of all of these different things, and then being to be edited. So just getting off the ground, up and running, giving us things to iterate from, like whatever our roles are, there are going to be tools to do it. I'm not in the event space myself, so I don't know where those tools are, but it's worth looking for them because those tools, if they're not already there, they are going to exist very, very soon. Yeah,
and just a sort of last point, actually, to go back to John's presentation earlier about this idea of workshopping things and brainstorming and asking 200 questions. Imagine if you can ask those questions, what if we do this, X, Y, and Z, and you've got a tool right there that you can draw this new floor plan. You can go, okay, well, what if we change the exhibition to look like this? Or what if we changed the delegate lounge to look like this? Or what if the stage looked like that? And you can see it there in real time, and the whole team can say, oh yeah, I can see how that would work. Maybe that wouldn't work, that would work. Instead of spending a week going back and forth to even find a rough floor plan, it means that when you go to your design team and when you come and speak to your production team, you can go, we think this, this, and this might be better. And once you've got that, that's what they build on. It's using it as that base. And there are tools that do that all the time. So it's a really great place to start.
Good. I'm looking at 4 red zeros on our timer, which means we are out of time.
Thank you.
I think we are out of time, but thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kate. So it goes without saying, just thanks again for everyone for coming along to the showcase. I hope you've just taken away some insights that maybe you didn't have before. For anyone that didn't put the hand up about having ever used ChatGPT, etc., Kate, are you going to be able to do a bit of a demo over in the corner? Yeah? So we've got a screen over there. If anyone would just want to take a quick look, feel free, pop over. There's a demo area over there. Otherwise, we've got drinks now and food being served up in the circle area. There will be more people because they have invited, Green and Fortune, our partners, have invited people to just come in and enjoy the terrace, the views and the drinks, etc. So you will see more people up there. But please do come and join us. It'd be great to chat about some of the things that we've heard about today. I would like to say a big thanks to the crew, the whole team that have put today's event together. There's a lot of hours. I know it was a late install. I think we couldn't get in till after 6, 7 o'clock last night. So all this was put together, and I don't think they finished till after 12. So thank you. And without further ado, I hope you can all join us for a drink. Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed.